Welcome to the Intuitive Patterns for the month of February 2020. What I like to do at the beginning is to actually give you the cards because some people are really interested in learning different things about the cards. So in the Osho Zen Tarot, the cards are Clinging to the Past, Maturity, and Celebration. The medicine cards are Buffalo and Butterfly. The Mayan Oracle is Universal Movement, Harmonic Resonance, and Organic Balance. The ancient Egyptian Tarot is the Prince of Discs, the World, and the Six of Discs. The Aleister Crowley deck are the Ace of Cups, the Fool, the Princess of Swords. In the Healing Earth Tarot, we have the Grandfather of Feathers, the Three of Feathers, and the Two of Feathers. And in the Words of Truth, we have immortality, expansion, dullness, and inappropriate time. So what I like to do is I like to kind of take these cards and kind of play with them in my mind and play with the metaphors in my mind and actually bring out, a potential idea of how these energies are impacting each of us in different ways. Now, I have a video that's out that is going to be about the metal rat year in the Chinese Astrology that starts on January 25th. And while in my writing, I actually included some of the Chinese astrology and the metal rat information in the intuitive patterns for the month of February. I'm going to keep it out here because there's a whole separate video that is in more depth about that. But on the short and sweet, the metal rat year is about kind of figuring out how to use your intelligence, cunning, and persistence to kind of navigate these extreme times that we find ourselves in. And the last time we were in a metal rat year was actually 1960. And so notice that that was a really iconic time where the Vietnam War began in 1960, December of 1960. And it was a time where there was a huge amount going on: transformation, change, bizarre contrasts, flower children, assassins, idealism, alienation, rebellion, and backlash. It also brought the rise of the acts of defiance that began the civil rights movement. So the Metal Rat Year video and the writing that I've done is really interesting to kind of dive into, and you might want to do that as a side venue, okay? So, but also the metal rat is just about grief and courage. So notice that sometimes we get very courageous when we have to confront things that are upsetting to us. So I hope that terrible things do not necessarily catapult us into progress, but sometimes that's the way it works. All right. Now, when I was looking at the cards, what I can tell you is that the cards that were standing out the most were the Healing Earth Tarot cards. And so we've got that Grandfather of Feathers and the Two of Feathers and the Three of Feathers. The Grandfather of Feathers is a man who is attempting to heal global illness that has sort of taken over the world. To do that, each of us is going to have to be able to see into the darkness of those that do not have the intention to help others, and the darkness within ourselves. We have a phrase in the healing arts community that it's called the wounded healer teacher. And so the best healers oftentimes have had the worst wounds. And that wounding again and that grief propels us into places where we have to look at ourselves more courageously. And that gives us that incentive. And so almost always when it comes to illnesses, whether it's a global illness or a personal illness, where we have to look is in our own darkness, the things that we have hidden from ourselves. So illness, hardships, suffering, and conflict are all related to this darkness. And this internalized darkness that we've not personally been dealing with tends to infect the world and spread the toxins into critical systems that confuse the immune system, because it's the nature of viruses and bacteria to kind of hide inside the parts of our cells and things that were once good and honorable, and that's how they fake out the immune system. So at this point in time, I would say the toxic hate in this world is intended to generate chaos and to promote self-destructive habits that are designed to distract you from the root cause of the illness. This year and in February, I think we're starting to really look at those root causes more. I think everybody wants to blame and shame and point fingers and everything. And I think, when it comes down to it, I think it's laziness. I really do. I think it's sort of a laziness, a lazy mindset, a laziness mentality that, we are going to just get what we want no matter what, and we don't see the bigger picture. And so we get into habits that are destructive for nature, they're destructive for mankind, they're destructive for the air, they're destructive for the world. And we have this belief that we're superior so we can have our little bad habits. But I think that we have to look at our laziness and to recognize that we're going to have to get very proactive, and we're going to have to change. I mean, we're going to have to change our patterns and our habits. So the intentions that are unconscious are sort of like infections, and they tend to tear down the structures and the organisms, and we just can't allow that to happen. And so the grandfather of feathers is reminding us that he is connected to the owl medicine, and owl medicine sees the whole truth. So Hera, the Greek goddess, was blind on one side, and so she had an owl on that side so she could see the whole truth. And I think it's time for us to see the whole truth, and we have to actively go into the darkness to seek out that truth. It's just time to go on a personal journey and to discover what has caused so much terrible confusion and hardship and suffering in the world. When we stray off the path of our divine self, the universe creates moments such as this as a sign to indicate to you that you are following a path that does not lead to the truth. It's the way the universe gets us to notice where we are frozen and trapped below a layer of ice that our ego manifested to keep us from the clarity we have been seeking. So the past, the present, and the future are not tenses of time, but think of them as tenses of the mind. The past is no longer before the mind, and the nostalgia makes the mind long for that which seems lost. The present is constantly slipping out of sight, and a person fears the loss of what is in this moment. The future may or may not be in your hands, but clinging to that which has not yet happened makes you miserable because you do not yet have it, nor do you know for certain that the dream is even possible. Everyone is being called to recognize and to step into a new place of maturity. That maturity is a reflection of your intrinsic Buddha nature. And everyone and everything right now, in this moment, is actually standing in his, her, or its Buddha nature. Often we don't recognize our own beauty that is this constant reflection of our Buddha nature. And yet, Buddha nature and beauty are constantly changing. Nothing ever stays the same. Can you see where cleverness is sort of a type of disease when it's not in alignment with higher truths? I see that happening so much in the world right now that people think that their mind and the cleverness of their mind and how they can manipulate other people is a reality. And it actually is not a reality at all. And it has no truth in it at all. And truth stands the test of time. And cleverness, while interesting, when it's done against people or in a manipulative way, is highly destructive. And it's important for us to start to take away the importance of people being clever and being maybe faster, but really they're not even faster. They've just learned sort of a way to twist things and manipulate things. So I think it's important at this point for us to become very aware of where we're being manipulated, and to know how that feels when you are being manipulated. You're being manipulated, and to counterbalance that with just truth, like to come back, to what Byron Katie says. Is it true? Is it true? It's just that simple. It doesn't need anything more complicated than that. So everything this month is about finding and maintaining a type of balance, where a little foolishness combined with a little wisdom might be just perfect. I think we've lost our silliness. I think we've lost our humor a little bit. And I think we need to step out of the seriousness that the manipulators are trying to drag us into. And I think we need to relax, and use that distortion as something very humorous for us. I mean, I have found many times in life that when people come at me with this, over importance and seriousness, that if I can be light about it, and notice I didn't say make light about it. I said just to feel into the lightness of the moment, rather than the heaviness that someone's trying to drag you into with them. Because a teacher of mine said that if you're being dragged into the mud with somebody who's already in the mud, you can't help them get out of the mud. So, you have to stay in a different place when there's a lot of heaviness and there's a lot of darkness trying to happen. So Butterfly is teaching you that change is going to require a type of courage. When the outside world does not match the inside values, then it is time to change the world in a way that aligns with the truth and values of your life. And when enough people come together with that, massive changes will happen on a global scale. And that's what I and a lot of other teachers are trying to call people towards. You are a part of the change, but you have to step up and step in, and you have to make it happen. And changes are never easy. They're always a lot of effort. So in February, there is a new world that is calling out to you, and that will require you to find out, while darkness can collapse things quickly, if that was never more obvious, darkness feeds on greed and ends up with nothing of substance to sustain it over long periods of time, because it basically feeds on itself to the point of collapsing entire systems. And you see this in, governments and systems where, they took down all the trees and then they collapsed their own system and ended up, destroying their own culture because of over usage of things. Okay. So we have to figure out how to find a better balance. And that's what the Butterfly is trying to teach. And a balance that can be maintained over long periods of time. And while I think in, the 1400s, there were limited options, I think that now we have massive options. We have solar, we have so many things that we do not need to be destroying our environment. We do not need to be doing that. We have the skills, we have the tools. They have to be implemented and they have to be required. And I think that's important for all of us to recognize that, these things need to be required, and they're starting to be required. And we're going to see this more and more as Pluto goes into Aquarius. And I'm excited about that time. It just happens to be 2023-24, but we have to weather this moment first. The other card here is Buffalo, and Buffalo reminds us that you cannot give or receive when your hands are in a fist, kind of ready to fight. And the external conflicts that manifest may not be exactly yours, but you will have to find a way to come to peace with them regardless. So internal and external worlds have to find a place to work in harmony with each other. And that again is this balance of the butterfly, the wisdom and the introspectiveness of Buffalo. That, you know, Buffalo is the time of winter. It's considered the direction of the north, and it's that time of cold contemplation. You know, that hard, cold contemplation of what you need to do. Where have you failed? Where have you succeeded? But it's that harsh reality that comes in that teaches you that you do have to plan for the future and you have to plan ahead. And when you don't do that, you put yourself and others that you care about and love in danger. So I believe that we are being asked in February, the Valentine's month, to make love more visible than hate. And that's not an easy assignment, but one that is more essential than ever before in this conflicted world. While this world has shifted into a place where unexpected changes are the norm and unseen forces are at work above and below the surface, it is up to you to let the force of this energy give you the power to connect to your destiny. Openings are possible if you are willing to let go of your old reference points and allow that same destiny to actively move you into new realms. This month, some things will require you to look objectively at them in a dispassionate way in order to make a clear choice, not based on fear of things from the past. Observe, respect, connect to, and find movement where it is offered. You may have to look hard and long to find those precious moments. Don't let any of them pass by. Grab a hold and appreciate them when they show up, and do not let one drop of goodness go to waste. Thanks everybody for listening. I hope you have a great February.